Hello folks, my name is Mark. How you guys doing? I just got back from seeing the new Spider-Man movie and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. So be careful, there's going to be spoilers here. I'm not going to hold back. Anyway, it is the story of Miles Morales. If you're not hip to your Spider-Man lore, Miles Morales is the ultimate universe Spider-Man. And what the story is basically in this alternate universe, right? Peter Parker dies, and then he gets bit by the radioactive spider. And Miles Morales is this like 16-year-old kid who's like a half black, half Latino kid. You know, his father's a police officer. You know, his mother's like a nurse or something like that. And he's like a working class family kind of guy, except he's, a genius. Right, because Spider-Man always has to be a genius. Anyway, and that's basically the setup there, right? He gets bit by the spider, and then he has to learn how to use his powers, right? And along the way, all these other spider people from other alternate universes show up, and they teach him how to use his powers and stuff. And then at the very end, he has to save the day, and it's actually really, really good. So first off, I want to say, like, before we get into the plot and stuff like that, it's animated, but it's not even in the same league as other, computer animated features, like, say, Finding Nemo or Wreck-It Ralph or something like that. It's on a whole nother level, right? And here's, like, at first, because when I first saw, like, the preview and that kind of thing, it looked a little stiff, right? And I thought that was like, it's not really smooth, because it does have a kind of stiffness when they walk and stuff, right? And when you see it in action, that's a stylistic choice. It basically makes it look more like a motion comic book and less like a Pixar movie, right? And I think that's actually like a really good decision that they did. Like if you see it, when you look closer, like all the characters have this two-tone kind of look to them, like the little dots. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's in a comic book, right? And the other spider heroes, when they sort of glitch, right? Because they're like, from other universes and their atoms are unstable, so they occasionally will kind of go, right? Because the idea is that they're like slowly going to die if they don't go back, right? When they do that, it looks like pieces of other comic books put on top of them. So it very much has that look and feel of a comic book. Right, and I think it's like fantastic, and it looks really, really cool. It pays very close attention to the source material also. So the other spider heroes in it, like there's Miles Morales, and then a version of Peter Parker shows up who's older. Older than the one that was in this core universe, right? So he's like, 37, something like that, and he's like old and out of shape. Well, I guess 37 isn't really old, but he's like out of shape, and he's like broken up with Mary Jane and stuff like that, and he's kind of, kind of depressed and all that stuff, but he's still Spider-Man or whatever, and he's like wearing sweatpants when he's out fighting crime, that kind of thing, right? Just kind of doesn't care anymore. And then there's, Gwen Stacy, which, if those of you who are paying attention to the lore, Gwen Stacy was Spider-Man's first girlfriend who gets killed by the Green Goblin, right? But in her universe, she becomes Spider-Woman, and then Peter Parker is the one that dies, right? So she's there. And then there's a little Japanese girl who has a psychic connection with a spider that lives in a robot, like. That one, I don't know if they just made that one up for the movie or if that one's in the comics or what. I've never heard of that one. That one was new to me. Then there's Spider Noir, who comes from a film noir universe where everything's in black and white, right? He's in the comics. And he's actually voiced by Nicolas Cage. I thought that was cool. And then the last one is my personal favorite, is Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, which... if you're not aware of that, there was actually a comic on that too. In fact, when I first started reading comics, Spider-Ham was one of the first ones I ever bought, because it was funny. It was, they'd have like animal versions of all the different characters and stuff. So, and he, of course, is a spider who was bitten by a radioactive pig, right? So I thought that was kind of cool that he was in there. You know, and he has all the cartoon universe powers. He can like pull giant hammers out of his you know, underwear and hit people with them and stuff like that, right? So that was kind of cool. You know, they actually paid really close attention to the characters there, and they're pretty accurate. You know, also a lot of the villains show up in this too. Tombstone shows up. Green Goblin, the Ultimate Universe version of Green Goblin, who for some reason in this one is like 50 feet tall. I don't know what's up with that, but yeah, he's in this one, and then Doctor Octopus, but it's an alternate universe, right? So Doctor Octopus is actually female, which I think works really well in this particular version. She's actually, you know, kind of the breakaway character that I think sort of steals the show a little bit, right? And then the main bad guy is the Kingpin, who... now, this particular stylistic choice, I don't know about this, but they made the Kingpin basically... He looks like a wall, right? He's like just this huge, giant dude, and his head is like down here. You know, like he's so like huge and fat and but muscular that it like his back comes all the way over like his head. And it looks funny at first, but I guess in this universe the Kingpin has super strength or some shit because he's like throwing cars around and stuff. You know, like straight up picks up like a taxi and throws it at him. So I'm like, okay, you know, it's an alternate universe tale, so you can do stuff like that, right? But anyway, but the Kingpin in this one though is, I think, really kind of cool too. Like they actually gave him a New York accent, right? He sounds like a gangster from New York, you know, not like in say the Daredevil TV show where he's all cultured and shit. It's like here he's like a thug, and that was kind of cool. And a couple other ones show up. Scorpion, I think, shows up, and then Prowler is in it, who's actually has a pretty big part. I won't give away any spoilers there, but Prowler is a relatively new and somewhat obscure Spider-Man villain that's you know, has been teased in the main cinematic universe. I don't know if you remember Homecoming with the guy with the ice cream, where he like, you know, tries to buy like a gun and shit. That's the Prowler. So anyway, the plot is the Kingpin is like using this machine to tear a hole in the universe, and other Spider-Men show up, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't really matter. I mean, not really, you know, it does what it's supposed to do, which is it brings all of them together, and then Miles Morales gets to have a nice arch about using his powers and growing up and taking responsibility and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know, all of that is very well written, right? It's a very good, you know, comic book story, right? And I think it's actually like better than all the other Spider-Man movies. I think, right? It's certainly as good as any of the Sam Raimi trilogy. It's way better than the two that came after that. You know, the one that had fucking Electro in it. Oh God, totally better. I would even say this is as good as, if not better than, Spider-Man Homecoming, right? Some people out there on the internet are saying that this is the best comic book movie ever. I don't know about that. I mean, I'd still say, you know, something like Civil War, Captain America Civil War, or The Dark Knight, you know, are probably better movies overall. But this one is certainly up there, you know. I had a great time watching it. It's funny. In fact, if anything, it's more of a comedy, I would say. Than anything else. Like basically the entire theater was just rolling while we were watching this. Like a lot of laughs out of this, right? And it certainly does a lot to you know, the fact that it's animated does a lot to separate it from the other films, you know. And plus you can do things in animation that you can't really do very well in live action, you know. Like for example, there's a scene where he's holding on to Peter Parker, and they're tethered onto a subway train as it's going, and they're like sort of dodging traffic at the same time, weaving in and out of stuff. And to do this in live action, it would either look weird, number one, or it would be, you'd have to make it like super dramatic, and it would cost a freaking, you know, $100 million to do the same thing that they did in this one. And it's like, but since it's like, you know, animated, they can get that shot, you know, and like not have to worry about spending like a ridiculous amount of money trying to do it. You know what I mean? So I think it was a really good choice to go animated on this. You know, I would like to see, well, if I could say anything, you know, negative about this particular movie, if there was anything negative about it, it's that there's kind of too much kind of hitting you all at once. You know, I really would. This is one of those movies that you buy on Blu-ray and then you go back and you sort of, you know, go through each scene and like, you know, pause it and kind of go frame by frame, right, through each scene, because there's just tons and tons and tons of stuff like in the background and things going on everywhere, all kinds of little Easter eggs which are no doubt hidden all over the place that you just don't see it when you're watching it, you know, in a theater, and it's all just rapid fire. So if that's my really only complaint that's coming to mind right now, is that it's at times a little overwhelming. Just how much stuff is on the screen, how much is coming at you, and every second of the movie is just like this visual overload. You know, like it's too much almost sometimes, and it would help. I think it would have helped to kind of slow it down just a little bit sometimes in the movie. But I mean, this is here. I'm like really grasping at straws to come up with something negative to say about this movie, because I'm not finding much. I mean, you know, it's really good, I think. I would like to see at some point, because they leave it wide open for a sequel, right? I'd like to see Japanese Spider-Man in there, right? If you don't know what Japanese Spider-Man is, it's like basically the Power Rangers version of Spider-Man. He has a giant robot. He like rides around on a you know, motorcycle and all of that stuff, and all the bad guys are like, you know, Power Ranger villains, right, is what they look like. I would really love to see him in there. I'd love to see the Electric Company version of Spider-Man, right? The one that talks in word bubbles and stuff. That'd be funny. I'd like to see that. I'd like, you know, I mean, the thing is, there's a million ways they could go with it, right, in coming sequels. And even if they wanted to, they could make a live action version of any of these characters, and it would tie right in, because the entire series is about the multiverse. You know, in fact, there's a part at the end where Miles looks, there's a machine and it opens a portal, and he looks into the portal and you see the multiverse, and it's all spider webs, right? And all these different colored spider webs and stuff like that, representing all of the different parts of the multiverse. And there's actually a comic that goes into this, and you know, there's a Spiderverse comic that they're taking this story from, and I'm really kind of happy to see that they're incorporating that into the movie. So, you know, so there will most definitely be a sequel to this, and I'm kind of waiting to see what's going to happen next. You know. So anyway, long story short, I really, really liked it, and you should go see it. If you're a fan of superhero movies in general, and if you like Spider-Man, you should go see this movie. Anyway, adios, folks.